but were collateral damage to the foolishness and the stubbornness of these types. So what is happening here? For many of us, it has been confusing to look around and find that there are people who are acting in ways that we don't understand. According to our logic and reasoning, what they're doing is completely mad. And according to our logic and reasoning, it could not have a positive outcome. Absolutely not. And yet, they carry out the actions with supreme confidence. They seem happy even in what they're doing. And they do it with such disregard for the things that you or I would take into consideration that it's really quite confounding. And this can lead us to doubt ourselves and to wonder, have we got it wrong? Have we miscalculated? Are we indeed making too much of things? But if you've asked this question of yourself long enough and then you've watched the patterns that emerge, you will have seen that, no, that's not the case. And if, like me, you're a sucker for punishment, and you decide to take them on and fight about this and fuss about this, and then stay and watch long enough to see what actually happens, ultimately, even though usually you and a lot of other people will suffer in the process, you will find that indeed you were right. And that this person or these people or these groups were acting completely outside of what is rational and logical. And that a negative conclusion was a foregone conclusion. There was no positive way for this to come out in the end. Certainly no way for this to be resolved without suffering and victims and other people who didn't deserve anything bad to happen to them, but were collateral damage to the foolishness and the stubbornness of these types. So what is happening here? Through my assessments, there's a few things. Certainly, yes, it's fear. There are people who, when they're presented with the reality, with the truth of the madness, the complete irrationality of their path and the way that they have chosen to live their life, when they are shown that this can only end in tears, they do not respond by adjusting their behavior. The idea of change fills them with fear. The idea of having to admit that they were wrong and humble themselves is a frightening, indeed a terrifying prospect. And it is so terrifying that it overrides and supersedes any of the other possible outcomes that could occur. That fear, that terror, that feeling of a potential loss of self, a loss of identity, is greater than any threat that they might hurt themselves or others. Indeed, it is not just the terror of it, it is their capacity to recognize it as being real. For them, the hurt that may come to people who are not them, the shame or humiliation, that is a far distant idea. But the prospect of their own diminishment, their own pain, that is immediate. That is what puts them in panic mode, and that is what leads to their stubborn leaning in and their irrational pursuit of a path that is obviously destined for disaster. And I would say that there is some suspicion within the person, within the groups that behave in this way, that indeed they're on a path of destruction. However, many of them have lived under the fog of a kind of magical thinking for the longest time. And because they have utilized so many underhanded practices and deception, it kind of appears to them that they've got away with many things for a long time. And in a way, it is so, but not ultimately, not really. But this is the way that they fool themselves. They allow themselves to be fooled because this calms them. This makes them feel like there's still a chance, that there's still a hope and there's still a possibility. And you're reminding them that they're wrong. You're telling them of the logic is a threat. It is a danger to the false hope that they are clinging so desperately to. There is very little that can be done at this stage. People in such a state are determined to follow this path to its bitter end. I am convinced of this because I have seen it more than once, and all around we see it with the people that we know, with the institutions, with countries. A path has been chosen. Those of us outside of it can see its bitter end. Those who could take the actions to change it, to halt it, to reverse it, have chosen the path that I just described. One where they lean ever more into magical thinking, into irrationality, because they cannot face the reality of what is certainly upon them. Then this is a path that cannot be stopped, and it will reach its logical conclusion. The only thing the rest of us can do is step back out of the way of danger.